Darkest manipulation tactics women use to control you. You've felt it before. That quiet shift in the room, the moment where something feels off, but you can't name it. Her tone is soft, her words are calm, yet somehow you're the one apologizing, doubting yourself, replaying the conversation at 2 a.m., wondering where your confidence went. That's not an accident. That's psychological leverage. Welcome back to Female Code Unlocked, the place where hidden patterns are exposed, unspoken rules are decoded, and emotional power games are dragged into the light. If you're ready to see what most men never notice until it's too late, hit subscribe now, because once you see this, you can't unsee it. Let me say this first, clearly. This isn't about hating women. This is about understanding human behavior when attraction, fear of loss, and emotional power collide. Because manipulation doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like affection with conditions. One of the darkest tactics begins with emotional fog. She doesn't attack you directly. She clouds your perception. She remembers events differently. She reacts to things you didn't mean. And slowly, you stop trusting your own memory. You'll say, "That's not what I said." She'll smile and respond, "That's how it made me feel." And just like that, facts no longer matter. Only her emotional interpretation does. You start walking on eggshells, not because you're weak, but because you're trying to be understood by someone who benefits from keeping you confused. Another tactic is strategic withdrawal. She gives you warmth, attention, intimacy, then suddenly pulls it away without explanation. No fight, no closure, just distance. Your nervous system goes into overdrive. You start chasing clarity. You send the "did I do something wrong" text, and the more you seek reassurance, the more power shifts into her hands. Because uncertainty is addictive. The human brain hates unfinished stories. And she knows that silence can speak louder than words. Then there's moral high ground manipulation. She positions herself as the emotionally evolved one. You're not ready. You're emotionally unavailable. You're projecting. And maybe you are, but notice how the labels always land on you. She never needs to explain. She diagnoses. This tactic is dangerous because it makes you doubt your worth while believing you're the problem that needs fixing. It's control disguised as emotional intelligence. Another subtle weapon is selective vulnerability. She shares just enough pain to hook your empathy. A past betrayal, a broken relationship, a wound that makes you want to protect her. But watch closely. Her vulnerability never leads to accountability. Only excuses. You become the safe place, while she remains emotionally untouchable. And perhaps the most overlooked tactic of all, future illusion. She speaks in "some days." Someday we'll travel. Someday I'll be ready. Someday this will make sense. That future keeps you invested in the present, even when the present is draining you. Here's the truth most men never hear. Control doesn't come from force. It comes from emotional positioning. And if you don't understand these dynamics, you don't lose her. You lose yourself trying to keep her. But this is only the surface. Because once you understand why these tactics work on the male psyche, you gain something far more powerful than resistance. You gain awareness. You start to see it differently once awareness kicks in. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with a cold, quiet clarity. Because the most dangerous manipulation isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. One of the deepest tactics is identity erosion. She doesn't tell you who to be. She rewards and punishes versions of you until only the one that serves her remains. When you're assertive, she calls you changed. When you're calm, agreeable, accommodating, she's suddenly warm again. So you adapt. You soften your edges. You explain instead of decide. You ask instead of act. And slowly, without realizing it, you trade self-respect for emotional peace. Another dark layer is comparison without comparison. She never says another man is better than you. She just mentions how emotionally mature her ex was, how her friend's boyfriend really understands her, how some men just get it. You're not being attacked. You're being measured. And the scoreboard is invisible. Board? Your mind fills in the gaps. You compete with ghosts. You try to outperform men who aren't even in the room. That's not coincidence. That's psychological pressure without fingerprints. Then there's reactive victimhood. When you finally speak up, when you set a boundary, express discomfort, or call out behavior, the script flips instantly. Now she's hurt. Now you're insensitive. Now the conversation isn't about what she did. It's about how your reaction made her feel. You walk in with a concern. You walk out feeling guilty. This tactic trains you to stay silent, because every attempt at honesty costs you emotional chaos. And perhaps the most ruthless one of all, intermittent validation. Praise comes randomly. Affection arrives without warning. Just when you're about to detach, she pulls you back in. A compliment, a late-night message, a moment of softness that feels like oxygen after drowning. Your brain connects relief with her presence, not stability, relief. That's how emotional dependency forms, not through love, but through contrast. Understand this. The male psyche is wired to protect, to fix, to endure. And when those instincts are exploited, a man doesn't collapse. He overfunctions. He tries harder, communicates more, sacrifices quietly, until one day he doesn't recognize himself. Here's the truth no one tells you. Manipulation only works when you outsource your self-worth. The moment your value depends on her mood, her approval, her emotional temperature, you've already surrendered leverage. This doesn't mean every woman does this, but the ones who do are experts at sensing emotional gaps. And if you're honest with yourself, you didn't fall for her beauty. You fell for the way she made you question yourself. But here's the shift, the dangerous one for manipulators. Once you stop reacting emotionally, once you stop explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, once you choose observation over validation, the entire game collapses. Because control needs participation, confusion needs engagement, manipulation needs access, and when you no longer need to be chosen, you become impossible to control. If this hit deeper than you expected, stay close. Because what comes next isn't about avoiding manipulation. It's about becoming untouchable by it. There's a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when the power finally shifts. It doesn't happen during an argument. It doesn't happen when you win a conversation. It happens when you stop needing the outcome. When her silence no longer tightens your chest. When her approval no longer defines your direction. When her emotional waves stop deciding whether you feel calm or restless. That's when the spell breaks. Because manipulation feeds on reaction, on urgency, on the fear of losing something you believe you need. And the moment you realize you were never weak, just emotionally invested, the fog lifts. You start listening differently, not to respond, but to observe. You notice how accountability disappears when pressure appears. How affection increases when you pull away. How chaos shows up right when you begin to detach. Patterns don't lie. People do. And here's the hard truth most men avoid. Not every connection is meant to be saved. Some are meant to be survived, learned from, and released. When you stop chasing emotional closure from someone who profits from keeping you open-ended, you reclaim your center. You no longer argue to be understood. You don't over-explain. You don't negotiate your boundaries. You simply enforce them. And that quiet firmness, that's what changes everything. Because a man who knows his worth doesn't need to threaten, control, or manipulate back. He just becomes unavailable to games. No dramatic exits, no revenge, no emotional speeches, just distance, just calm, just self-respect. And ironically, that's when the dynamic flips. When the questions start coming from her. When the uncertainty changes sides. When the control she once held dissolves. Not because you took it back, but because you stopped handing it over. This is the level they never prepare you for. The one where attraction either deepens honestly or ends cleanly. And both outcomes are victories. If this video gave language to something you've felt but couldn't explain, you're not alone. You're not broken. You were just never taught how these dynamics really work. This channel exists for that reason. So if you want clarity instead of confusion, power instead of pressure, and awareness instead of emotional traps. Make sure you're subscribed to Female Code Unlocked, because the more you see, the harder it becomes for anyone to control you again.